So today, when I woke up, I had no idea what I was going to talk about. And so I said, I'm speaking today, but why am I speaking? What is the purpose of this speech here? So I decided that I will speak about the purpose of speech. So there is a beautiful verse in the Upanishad that begins like this. It says, you are the deep driving desire, what your deep driving desire is. You are what your deep driving desire is. As is your desire, so is your will. As is your will, so is your deed. And as is your deed, so is your destiny. It's from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So everything in creation really arises as that fine, deep desire, which is an intention. And then this intention gets converted to a thought. Now, the thought is in the beginning, it is unmanifest, it's amorphous, it's very, very subtle. But then as it starts to rise through the higher levels, more superficial levels of subconscious mind, then it reaches the conscious mind, and then it bursts forth outside that conscious mind as a thought, as a spoken word then. So the spoken word, which is one of the most powerful things this world ever has to offer, the spoken word is the very first expression of a very powerful impulse of life. So then what is the purpose of speech? And our guru, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who founded the Transcendental Meditation Society, or the program, he always said this, and it never left us. The purpose of speech is to create bliss in the listener. So what are the elements that one needs to create bliss in the listener? So there are 5 of them. The first thing is that you have to have right speech. Second, it has to be clear and precise. Third, it has to be powerful. Fourth, it has to be pleasing and harmonious. And lastly, it has to be purposeful. So when I say right speech, what is right speech? Right speech means it has to be evolutionary, it has to be progressive, it needs to flow without any kind of resistance. And it must help not only the listener, but it must also help the speaker. It mustn't ever harm anybody. And this only happens when it comes from a field of consciousness, when one is naturally aligned with nature, all the laws of nature. Then everything you do will be the spontaneously right speech, the spontaneously right action. The second element is clear and precise speech. The clarity comes from knowing your subject thoroughly. So when you know what you're talking about, that's very, very important. And the second element here is simplicity and innocent. It just comes innocently and simply from the heart. And this only happens when you are in that source of thought. Because when you are in the source of thought, which is deep inside you, you are now in the now, which is what everybody calls being in the moment. So you've left the past behind. There are no regrets of the past here. You've left the future alone because there is no anxieties and fears. And when you speak from a place where there is no fear or anxiety, then the light of consciousness shines right through your speech. The third element I talked about is powerful speech. And the best way to explain this is the analogy that is often used, and the analogy is that of an arrow. So when you take an arrow, string it to the bow, and then you pull it back all the way, and it's fully pulled back. At that point, it is still, it is fully rested, but it has the maximum potential behind it. And so also, when you pull your mind back into the self, fully pull it back into the self, then every thought that you have, every action that you perform, every speech that you give will have the maximum power. The next thing is harmonious and pleasing pleasing speech. And this only happens when speech arises from a loving heart and a cultured mind. Um, the art of speaking pleasantly only happens and it comes from cultivating politeness, softness of the heart and of the mind. And so this, when you fill your heart and mind with love and compassion, that's when your thoughts become powerful and it becomes powerful. Your thoughts have to be nonviolent, born, like I said, of simplicity and innocent, but your thoughts must also be truthful but tactful. So you speak the truth, but you speak the sweet truth. And I'll tell you the story of the diplomat. Somebody asked at a gathering, so what is the definition of a diplomat? And one wise guy said, a diplomat is the person who says, when he says yes, he means maybe. When he says maybe, he means no. And when he says no, he ain't no diplomat. So simple and truthful expressions are what produce the most desirable effects. And the last one is speaking purposefully. So if the purpose of speech is to bring out perfection in action, and then that action is the action that is performed without any attachment to the fruit of the action. This is the very key principle, which is the founding principle of the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the most important textbooks ever written on earth. And what it is that of action, performing action without attachment to the fruit of the action. So when we work from that place where we are not working from the ego, but we are working from the authentic self, we are performing that speech and performing that action, which doesn't carry forward our goal or will. It really is carrying forward the divine will. That's when magic happens in your speech. And all of these elements come together. All these 5 elements that I talked about come together when you have a joyful, energetic body, when you have a loving, compassionate heart, when you have a clear and reflective mind, and when you have that lightness of being, when the light of consciousness shines through you. You can only achieve all of these elements when you are in touch with yourself, which happens only through meditation. So thank you for listening to me. Namaste, and let the magic happen.